Welcome back to another episode of That's an Issue podcast. And this week, Dr. Tara and not Dr. Yoni Kleshik sit down with the one and only Lisa Twerski. And yes, Twerski, she's related to all of the Twerskis. Her father-in-law was Rabbi Dr. Abraham J. Twerski. And I actually first met her when I interviewed her husband on another show. And I didn't know at the time who she really was, because I don't really know anyone. That's a common theme in my life, but I love doing these shows because I get to know people. But when I did research for That's an Issue, there's one name that kept on coming up. Lisa Twerski. She's someone that really carved out her place in the mental health world. And I'm going to read a little blurb about her so I don't botch up who she is, because this was really well written. She is an experienced licensed clinical social worker with a demonstrated history of working with individuals and couples. Her work includes victims of trauma, rape, incest, and domestic violence, as well as individual and couples work spanning a number of issues. And there's a lot more there. But this week we talk about, like you saw it in the title, red flags when it comes to dating. This is an episode I wish I had before I was dating. Thank God none of the red flags that she's saying actually occurred to me personally, but it's one of those things that, like, you go into it, you're dating, you want to know what to really stay away from and what not to, and pick up on those hints. And you know what? This is an episode that, me being married now, I want to share this with people that are married. There's just such good knowledge of how to operate, and what you always want to stay away from toxic people. Toxic people are just something, if you could in your life run away from, run away. And in this episode, we really get into the psychology of different kinds of people. And yeah, I was fascinated. And without further ado, here you have Lisa Twerski.
Mental health, relationships, those are loaded topics and something that affects every part of our lives. But we aren't having enough open conversations about it.
And that's an issue. Okay, welcome back, Lisa Twerski, to the show. We're going to speak today about dating. On the prior episode, we spoke about marriage. We're going to reverse and talk about dating and mental health, and how one can prepare oneself in the dating space so they can have a successful marriage, as we spoke about before.
Great. Good topic.
Yeah, a very good topic that a lot of people I feel, discusses at the Shabbos table, a lot. Like, it's one of those hot topics.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's jump into that.
Okay.
What do we want to start with?
Red flags.
Yeah.
Let's talk about red flags.
Right away? Okay.
Okay. So can we do a prerequisite to red flags? Because I think that a lot of people can get the information on the surface of it, and if they don't have below the surface, we talked on the other show about marriage in terms of knowing yourself, and this is kind of related. Knowing yourself takes a certain presence and awareness about yourself, obviously. And in dating, I can give you a list of red flags, but if you aren't plugged into the idea of being really present with that other person on a date, you're going to miss them anyway. We have to really be present in our dates, and you want to know what some red flags are, and I'm going to enumerate some specifics, but I really want us to think about, not get caught up so much in the intellectual aspect of that and have this checklist in your head, because then you're not going to really be present and able to see those things unless they're really glaring and blaring. Because a lot of the things that come up in the dating process that are problematic, that are red flags, are subtle. And it's a pit in your stomach. It's a little bit of a worrying buzz in your head. It's a bit of a discomfort, or a bit of a question mark of a, that was weird. It's not usually something that is going to bowl you over. So you need to be really present to pick it up and not in your head so much. But we'll talk about,
Okay.
you know.
Let me take a step back for a minute. People talk about this concept being ready to date.
Right.
Like, what do you think that means? Like, how would a person know that they're ready?
Well, you know, I was asked that recently, actually. And one of the things I said was, how do we, you know, I don't think that in the frum community, we so much really expect our kids to be fully ready, meaning most of them are not financially independent. They're going to be dependent, right? So in the outside world, then you're not ready to get married, like, because you're not ready to get married. We date for marriage. So yeah, you could date if you're not financially independent, but you can't get married. So, or we expect them to still need to be near parents and to go to parents and to be very connected to parents, not just because family and Yontif and Shabbos is, but because we kind of still expect to mentor them a bit in their life. Obviously, then there's a range, like somebody's super immature or somebody's super irresponsible or somebody's super self-centered or somebody, you know, all of these kind of things, looking at your child and asking them. But again, you have to raise them to be emotionally intelligent about themselves. So you want to look for that kind of maturity and introspection, and if they articulate why they think they're ready. What makes them think of that? Are they going to tell you about the dress or the, I don't know what the guys will talk about, or the, you know, everyone is, or I don't know, but, you know, what's the immature answer and then what's the mature answer? Do they have a mature answer? There's not one, but is there a conversation they can have about why they think they're ready and in what areas they're not ready? Well, I can't support myself yet. I'm in college, but I feel ready for a relationship. I feel excited for moving on to the next stage if I don't have to worry about the financial burden. You know, is there a conversation? And, but that's a conversation, you know, a conversation. Or, you know, people make these kind of sweeping things. Well, I don't let anyone date until they're back from seminary for 6 months. Maybe they don't need 6 months. Maybe they need more than 6.
Right.
Can we have a, you know, I want to hear, I want to talk. I want my kids make fun of me. Like, oh, mom said you need to have a conversation. Yeah, you need to have a conversation. Let's hear about it. Let's talk about it. I'm just going to pass judgment. Paskin, what? Like, I don't think it works like that. Right. And I think that that's part of the process of being able to be married, is that you can have a conversation with your parent, certainly,
right,
if you have a good relationship, obviously. But if you can't have a mature conversation with your parent, like, how are you having a relationship with a spouse? Doesn't seem like it goes so well.
Right.
So it's both exploratory but preparatory to have
Right.
that conversation with your child, I think.
Are we open as a society to people saying, I'm not ready? Are we open to, I mean, have we become more open to that? I don't know.
Think so. Probably that is case dependent. You know, there are going to be parents that are fine with hearing that. There are going to be parents that get super anxious if you're part of the community where there's a shidduch crisis and you're really anxious and your child says, yeah, but I know there's a suggestion, but I'm not ready. Like, maybe there's going to be more pushback. But, you know, I think even in the anxious parent, they're also going to be not wanting to see their child harmed. That's part of why they get anxious, is what if they wait and it's a problem. But, you know, I think it's case by case.
Depends on your circle.
Or maybe it depends on the individual. I've heard a lot of girls say, I'm not ready. and tell their parents they're not ready. I mean, and that's how they wind up in my office. They just want to talk through some things, and their parents have sent them. So obviously parents are, in this generation, kind of more psychologically open or understanding, or, we're in a different place than we were 20, 30 years ago in a lot of ways. But it probably depends on the parent, right. I think, more than the circle.
Right.
I think you can have it go okay in all the circles, but not by all the parents.
Right. That's a good point. Okay, so someone, let's say, is ready to date.
Right.
And they're going out and they're present.
Yes.
What are they looking for? I mean,
right.
I guess almost like, what's the goal of dating in a sense? Like, what are you hoping to gain? So
I think of two categories. There's the individual compatibility. Who am I compatible with as a person? Emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, familially, intellectually, like, who am I compatible with? And then there's the category of the mitos, or the character traits it takes to be a good spouse that I want to see in this other person, and not to think that if I see one, the other is definitely there, or vice versa. I could see somebody with great qualities who I am not compatible with, and I could see somebody that I'm feel super compatible with, who's a jerk or selfish or, disrespectful or dishonest or something, in some little minor way. These are the red flags you're talking about. And I don't want to dismiss it or think I didn't see that right or hear that right or understand that right, because, like, wow, we click in this way and that way, and we could talk forever, and we know, and we both agree on this and the hashkafa and da, ba, 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 ba. So I think those are the two that people really need to understand. In terms of the specifics of the red flag, let's talk about what you do want to see. What are the positive qualities, or the qualities that you want, or that is important in having a healthy marriage. And that's somebody who's respectful, kind, generous, loving, supportive, understanding, and not, red flag, somebody who is, self-centered, my way or the highway, jealous, possessive, angry. Nothing's ever their fault. It's everybody else. Can't take responsibility for anything. Those are some of the red flags that you want to look out for and tune into, and again, be really present, because they're not going to be screaming at you. They're going to be somebody who is faintly mocking, or somebody who is pushy, and when you stand your ground, gets angry, but not loud yelling angry. That's almost never going to happen in the dating process. But somebody who can't handle a no, I'd rather not, is, without you kind of seeing a flare of anger because you're present. That sounds so great.
So how does this work with people who go on only a few dates? Like, will they be able to pick this up?
So I think with the proper education, again, we're back to that topic of education. I think that with good education and awareness that people can pick this up. I think the biggest obstacle to picking it up is the way we have, for all good reasons, with all good intentions, the way we've set up the system where we're not educating or encouraging or helping people to investigate what they're uncomfortable with themselves. So you do something on our date, and that leaves me with a big question mark or a faint sense of discomfort or concern. And what does the young woman or young man do? They ask their parent or the shadchan or their mentor,
their Rebbe,
or their Rebbe, what do you think this means? And what do those people do? They answer. And it's not that I don't think there's a place for those people. I think that people dating do need a trusted adult in their life. But I would really like for those trusted adults to play out with them how they can investigate that themselves from within the dating process. How can you go back and ask that? Ask about that. Talk about that.
Interesting.
Because I don't know. How do I know what they really meant by that? I wasn't there, and I don't read their mind, and I don't know them so well.
Right.
Right. And I've seen a lot of things kind of go badly because of that. One young woman I'm thinking of who, after a date the young man was very, very, very kind and complimentary and, looking forward. And then she'd get this message from the shadchan that he's not sure. And then there'd be a yes. And then it would happen again. And then it happened the third time. And at some point, there's a lot of options here. You can go and say to your mother or sister or whoever, like, what do you think that means? He says all these complimentary things and he's so looking forward. And then he does this thing where he has to think about it. What do you think that means? And the mom will say, well, people are confused and it's okay. And they just get flustered and that happens sometimes. And maybe the sister says, he's a jerk. You should just drop him. And so few people say, maybe you want to ask him about that at the end of the next date when he's doing that. Say, hey, I'm getting kind of confused. And where the young person needs help, I think, is how to say it so that it feels okay. It's still going to be uncomfortable, but that it feels appropriate or respectful. Like, let's role play as opposed to, I'm sure it's fine or I'm sure he's a jerk. Like, neither of those you have any knowledge are true.
Right. Right, and what you're saying is tools that are going to help them in marriage. So let's start now.
Right, exactly. And if I'm going to not be able to negotiate this with you, this is the least of it. There's many more things to negotiate. And if I can't say, hey, it's making me so confused. I'm just wondering what's going on without seeing anger or ridicule. Oh my God. Oh, you're going to keep me to every last word I say? Or the guy goes, oh my God, I'm so sorry. It's not me. My mother is like, she had this broken thing. Her sister's, son broke his engagement and now she makes me slow down. I'm saying two totally different scenarios. One guy's a jerk and should be dropped. It doesn't matter how compatible you are. Doesn't have the midos you want for marriage. And the other guy's a sweetheart. But you don't know.
Right. So what are the three that you can, if we can, if someone who's dating can say, in marriage, these are, pain points. Let's try to avoid those now and look out for them. So that I can focus on, let's say, an anger issue, like you just mentioned, or what would be what are the main issues that people are dealing with in marriage that you could try focusing on prior? I know we discussed like figuring out what's compatible for you, but then there are like pretty broad, like these are going to be challenges in a marriage. Look out for them, at least a few of these things when you're dating.
Right. I would say, one of the ones at the top of the list is respect. you want to see that you're respected and that you respect the other. That doesn't mean always agreed with. That means that if I disagree, or if I can discuss it with you respectfully. I don't get nasty or demeaning or contemptuous or judgmental when you're different, or when you have a different opinion, or when you want something different than I thought you would want. I say, oh, I didn't realize. And that, again, it's going to come in on very, very, very minor things. So, which is why it's important to kind of really be present and bring yourself in the dating process. And I don't mean major all the time. It could be, I got you the Diet Coke that you like, and I want to say, I'm really in the mood for water. But I'll just keep it quiet because, why make a big deal? It's not such a big deal. And I'm not by any means saying you should create issues. No, do not play games that way. But don't hold back, because when and how else, where else are you going to get to see that the person goes, oh, okay, sure, let me change that. Or, oh, God, high maintenance on the road.
Right.
Okay, so disrespect.
Disrespect. You want to see respectful interchange, respect around differences. It's very easy to respect someone when they're agreeing with you. It's when they're disagreeing with you or needing something else. Do we see respect, the ability to kind of go with or hear? I might still disagree, but hear it. Am I apologetic that it's already here and ordered and they're not going to take it back? Or do I start getting blaming and obnoxious because you want me to do something different, or because I feel badly that I did the wrong thing? Either way, if I'm being disrespectful, that's a problem. So disrespect. Obviously, dishonest, any kind of dishonesty that you pick up where somebody is contradicting themselves or told you one thing and then it's really something else or whatever. Dishonesty, obviously, it's a little harder to pick that up. I don't think that there's a lot of situations where we're going to catch it. But when we do catch it, if there's sort of like faint ones, we shouldn't just assume we misunderstood. And I think another one is generosity. And I don't necessarily mean generous money-wise. I mean generous in spirit also. Generous when it's not just what I want. Am I generous? You would rather this? I could be generous about, sure, okay. Mm-hmm. You, obviously, there's also the generosity, gender roles here, but generosity of the person of, we were out for 3 hours and, nobody suggested getting something to eat or drink or whatever. There is that kind of generosity also, but the generosity of spirit, how kind they are in that way, or how thoughtful they are in that way. We could call it a lot of different things, but you're looking for somebody who's thoughtful, generous, kind in those ways of being, like we said about marriage, being interested in you, and vice versa.
Are there questions that either, I guess, the girl or the guy can ask to try to get out any of these points? Like knowing there's, let's say, a limited time, I'm not going to see so much. I want to know how they respond when something doesn't go their way.
Right.
Could they sort of ask that? Like, is there a way to ask that you would get an honest answer?
Probably not.
Okay.
I think it's going to be more in, again, if you're really present and tuned in, they'll be talking about other things. They'll be talking about times in their life, experiences in their life, time in yeshiva or time in seminary, or where they went for Shabbos, or where something in camp that happened or whatever. And don't shy away from the questions you want to ask about, oh, why would you do that? What happened there? Because it might, that's a somewhat less direct way of asking, Are you patient? Are you kind? Are you generous? How did they respond? Are they very proud of the fact that they, fooled so-and-so out of such and such? Now, if that was like some high school prank and they're just relaying a funny prank, that's different than, I always get over on people. That attitude of I always manage to, and there's sort of that unkind, disrespectful flavor. And I think, again, if we are eyes open and present, we're usually going to have examples of even faint or possibility of seeing some of these things if we're not going to just always capitulate or fill in or, smooth over by saying, oh, okay, to the Diet Coke when really I wanted water this time. It really is about presence.
Or Coke Zero.
Or Coke Zero, exactly. It's a big problem. There are opportunities. I think they're missed opportunities because we're all on our best behavior, but to the extent of I'm going to be down the kafschus you left, right, and center, and that's very nice mida, but it needs to be tempered for dating so you know who you're dealing with.
Do you feel like people are open and say that they have mental health issues on dating, or that usually comes up afterwards?
I think that people, there's sort of this trend of being told, if they actually know, being told to tell on the third date is a common whatever, and that is something that comes up, and it is, different people have different reactions to that depending on what it is that they're being told about. And definitely should not be something that they're told they can't discuss with their parents or some trusted adult, because, some 19, 20, 21, 22-year-old who's told by the person they're dating and starting to care about that they were X, treated for X, should not have to negotiate that by themselves or figure that out by themselves if they don't want to. But that seems to be the trend.
Do you usually get called on like the third date?
I have definitely gotten those calls of all different sorts of information.
And how do you go about that? Like, what's the process? Someone calls you, says, just was told XYZ. I mean, what are the types of...
Right. So I would want to hear a bit about what they know, if they know, and if they don't know, the questions that I would usually have is, what's the history? What's the follow-up? What's the current constellation of whatever's going on?
So someone's suffering with let's say, depression. You would ask what they've done before.
What was the course of it? When did it start? How did it get noticed? What was the response in terms of treatment? What's the treatment been like? What's the functioning been like? How has it affected things? How do they think it's going to affect things? And, again, not necessarily that I'm going to get to speak to, or they're going to get to speak to the person's therapist, although people do that as well. But also, what's their relationship with their issue? If it's something that is ongoing, is it not really affecting their functioning, but that they take very seriously? Meaning they don't, say, oh, I'm fine and I'm not going to whatever and it's going to be fine. Or they say, no, I need maintenance and I'm maintaining and, but I wouldn't want to not tell you, but it doesn't affect my life, but I take it seriously. Okay. That's very different than I had this thing, but it's not really a thing. And I was told I'd tell, so I'm telling you, but it's really nothing. And I didn't, and I don't know. And really you find out, one of the things about this community, yes, we date for shorter periods of time, but it's very, very normal to investigate the, kishkas out of people. Like, no one's going to blink an eye that their friends got called and their Rebbe got called, or their Mora got, whatever, their teacher got called, or the seminary got called. Everyone's going to get called and no one really blinks an eye. So there are calls to make and to find out about actual functioning versus reported functioning. Does it match up?
Right.
Was the person honest about it? Where they really disappeared and not in any school for a year, and they told you it was like this minor thing that's nothing? What's the picture? I want to know, like, as much as the pattern of what's going on as possible.
Do you view like substance abuse as a mental health issue, or is that like someone is struggling with that or has struggled with that, and then is dating and that comes up? Is that a mental health issue, or is that something totally different?
It's an addiction is a mental health issue. I mean, it's just like, in terms of how it's seen by the mental health community, it's not different than anxiety, depression, etc. So the question is how seriously are they taking their issue, and how committed and consistent have they been in their treatment and their maintenance of their treatment? That's, a serious issue.
Do you think that some of these people are, anyone going through any of these, this journey, whatever it is, some of them come out stronger? It's less of a risk in a marriage, perhaps. Sometimes people say, I wouldn't take a risk with that, but you could say the opposite, right? You could also say, have you seen that people are stronger because they've been through such a process?
Well, they definitely, the ones that take it seriously and commit to it are probably stronger, definitely broader, meaning they've experienced something that somebody else didn't have to, and they understand probably themselves and the world a little bit more than the person who never had to come up against anything particularly difficult in their life. Everything was la-di-da and fine and dandy. But again, you're looking for taking it seriously and committing to, in that instance, sobriety of whatever sort. And how serious are they about that? How committed are they to that? To me, that makes a lot of difference.
And you could apply that to any mental health issue.
Yes. Or I was on medication, but it was fine. I was feeling fine. I'm not on it anymore. Oh, so was there a process to that? No, they just went off. That's different than the person, like, I worked with my therapist and my psychiatrist, and I'm at this thing and everything, I haven't had any whatever, and Okay, that's, more reassuring, because it seems known. To whatever extent we can know anything about life, it seems more known what the course of things are if I have been mindful and consistent and committed to a process than if not.
Okay.
Would you say that, how would you say that, Hollywood affects our dating in the 21st century?
I guess it depends on how exposed you are to Hollywood. But I don't know. I think that I think it's more like the expectation of being swept away is probably Hollywood attributable or Hollywood adjacent. There are people that think in terms of being swept away that are not particularly exposed to Hollywood, but maybe they have friends who are exposed to Hollywood or whatever. There is this sort of in the air notion that you're going to be swept away and gaga, and then I'll say to somebody, and they're not, but they really like this person, and there's so much there, but they're not gaga, and I'll say to them, are you like ever gaga? And they'll be like, no. Okay, so it doesn't really sound like that's you're telling me all good things about this person, but because you don't live up to what you might call that Hollywood look of what somebody looks like when they're in love, then I must not be. Except you're not ever rah, gaga, type. Do you know girls, or if we're talking about a girl, do you know other girls? I'm not like my friends, or I'm like, are your friends like that about other things? Yes. Are you ever like that about things? No, it's not my type. So, and in that way, I think, people think it's all one thing. We all look the same when we're in love, or we all feel the same, and it's not all one thing. Different people are different, and different people want different. And there's a lot of, misconceptions, I think, about that, about what it looks like and what it feels like.
I've heard the term like looks will grow on you. Is that something you agree with?
No,
That's a clear no.
I don't.
So many people say that though.
I know. I think they're wrong.
They're wrong. I mean, people say
Well,
specifically
let me
for
let me-
a girl,
let's
a
break
guy's
this
looks
down.
will grow on the girl. People don't say it for guys to girls. They say for girls to guys.
Right. Let's talk about attraction.
Okay.
Okay. Attraction doesn't necessarily have to do with looks. Specifically, you can be attracted to somebody, or you could have thought in your head that you or had a type in your head of who you're attracted to, and then found yourself very drawn or dating this other looking person. And that doesn't mean, and you feel this pull, but you're saying to yourself, oh, it can't be that because they're not tall, or they're not short, or they're not blonde, or they're not brunette, or they're not redhead, or they're not, I don't know. Attraction is attraction. And you can feel attracted to somebody that you don't like, and you can like somebody and not be attracted to them. And if you care about somebody, you might be able to be you might be able to enjoy yourself with them, but you're not, that feeling of attraction is kind of primal. It's there or it's not there. That doesn't mean that you can't say to yourself, I really like this person and I could enjoy myself with them physically. There's a difference between repulsed by
Right.
and not chemically drawn to, but could enjoy myself with. There's different categories, actually. But that I don't have that flood of chemicals when I look at this person. That doesn't come later. That's a innate primal response that's there or not there. It's not about intellect. It's not about discussions we have. I can feel closer. I can feel interested. I can be interested in and able to enjoy myself with this person. But that kind of thing that you're talking about, at least the primal thing, doesn't develop later. It's a chemical reaction.
Do you
That
need
happens.
it? Do you need it?
Not necessarily.
No. Right.
You do not want to be repulsed.
Right.
That would be bad. I don't think there's overriding. That's really hard.
You're saying even though looks won't grow on you, you could still
Be
If everything-
attracted. You can still be attracted.
right. Or, things can work. Put it that way. I don't know who our audience is. I'm just going to leave it at that. But things can work. But
Okay.
that primal pull does not develop later.
Okay.
do you see that as an issue later on in a marriage?
Not necessarily, because the primal that flood of chemicals is something that actually kind of dissipates over time. That doesn't mean that there isn't sort of a baseline attraction that might be different than just like I can enjoy myself. That there's still kind of a level of difference there, but that big rush of chemicals that people think of as being, gaga or infatuated or whatever, that's a scientifically based phenomenon. It happens in the beginning of relationships when it happens, and it tops off and starts kind of literally, the brain chemicals kind of start ebbing down at the 2-year mark or so. And that doesn't mean there's not attraction anymore. It just means that huge rush does not stay forever. It's just not how we're built. It's why the relationship can feel different and needs to kind of deepen in a different way. It's unfortunately why people lose interest and do things they shouldn't. Or question their relationship because I don't feel the same. Well, you're not supposed to. We don't work like that. It's supposed to shift and change with all sorts of different chemicals and, for women, hormonal and blah, blah, blah. We're just not, it doesn't go like that. People don't really always realize that. So then they interpret things that are physical as emotional. And that's a shame because they're not. You just kind of got to know it.
Right. Could you talk a little bit about pressure and like the societal pressure and how that's affecting how people date, or maybe the quickness to get engaged when the person doesn't feel totally confident in that.
Right. Or the pressure of when will the next one come along, or the pressure of we go in age order and I have a bunch of single siblings stacked up behind me, or funnily enough, I don't know, it's not so funny, but interestingly enough, maybe, hope it's interesting. I don't really have so many people coming in, at least after the fact, and saying, I said yes because I didn't think I was going to get another date, or I didn't think I'd get married unless I just jumped into this one and now I'm miserable. As much as we talk about the pressure, and there is that pressure, usually it's something else they were unaware of or fooled in. And I don't mean fooled in like the person mindfully fooled them. Maybe sometimes, yes, but other times just, they misunderstood something. It's much more that I'll hear than well, shidduch crisis. I didn't think I'd get married, so I said yes.
Okay, so a little bit, let me reword
Not that I've never had it.
Right.
Not that I've never had it. I have had it. But not as much as you'd think,
right.
given all the talk.
I want to reword it because I'm asking from like a specific point. A few years ago, my sister had a few friends who all got engaged and broke engagements within a very short, like it was sort of random, like 3 friends from different places. And she was like very upset about it, like what's going on?
Right.
And she spoke to all of them, like they were close friends. And they all told her the same story, which she thought was very interesting. They were all pressured to get engaged because they were told, right, by whoever they had went to for advice. And I think it was like actual like dating coaches, and I don't even think it was parents. I think it was the next step, that it's fine if they just logically make this decision and they don't emotionally feel it. That's fine, and that's okay. And the emotions are going to come with time. And then after being engaged for, I don't know, someone a month, and one of them was 2 months or whatever it was, they like realized like, I can't do this. Like, I don't want to marry this person. Right. And then broke engagements.
Right.
What do you think about that?
Well, I think in some ways it makes my point, meaning here were girls who were maybe worried about getting married, and now they were going to have broken engagements and be on the market and still broke their engagement rather than marrying someone they didn't think they were compatible with. This is the point, that with all the talk about the pressure and the shidduch crisis and the this and the that, yes, girls can be swept along when they're putting their trust in an adult who's giving them bad advice. But ultimately, this whole pressure, this whole shidduch crisis thing is not actually getting girls to marry people they don't want to be married to, by and large.
Okay.
So it
so
makes the
are
point.
you saying that advice is bad advice?
Well, I don't know exactly what the
Right.
advice was, but something went wrong. I don't know if it was all the same person, but sweeping someone along and not letting them kind of really decide and feel and know that this is right is a problem.
Right. Like, there's not a number of dates that now you have to get engaged. Like,
Well, it depends. It's up
Right.
to the people,
Right,
right?
right.
And even then, if the guy wants to say, "Listen, I can't go past date number X. I'm gonna have to end this." That's his right.
Right.
Okay. I don't know that you want to, depending on what part of the community, whatever. But I don't know that you want to be, that's not really kind and understanding and generous. And,
Right.
I understand.
That's almost
if you,
a sign to
that's
you that
different if
your
you
gut is
feel
right.
like, I feel like, we're not moving. It's not, nothing's getting clearer. So I don't see, like, how do I just keep sticking here if a guy would say that, let's
Right.
say, or, but,
Right. If someone's putting a number on it, that would not be a good sign.
right.
Yeah.
It sounds kind of pushy, controlling. I don't know. Maybe, that pressure, got to pressure you. Why do you want to marry someone you have to pressure into marrying you? Like, for your own sake, why do you want to marry someone you have to pressure into marrying you? And I understand it's hard when you're ready and the other person isn't. Whoever you are, it's really hard to be ready and the other person isn't ready. And to hear they're not ready about you when you're ready about them, I get that. That's a really hard, uncomfortable thing. But why would you want to marry someone unless they're sure? And if it's really hard for you that they're not sure and you think there's something off with that, given how much you've shared and how much you've done and how much, then why do you want to continue this?
Are there any qualities that, you've mentioned before that are, flags, but sometimes on the flip side of those flags create a very charismatic and successful individual, right? So you can see why someone either is attracted to or those qualities could actually be harnessed in a good way. And if those qualities are harnessed in a good way, you can have like a fantastic individual. So is there any saving grace if someone is finding themselves in a relationship with someone that has some of these rough edge qualities that says, if I polish that, this could be a superstar? Or is it too much of a risk?
Well, I don't know that we polish each other. Like, how do you know? You know what I mean? Think of any promise, even if it's a promise. Yeah, but when I get married, I am going to X, Y, or Z. I really caution people, marry the person you see today. Because, I don't know, even if they promise you, even if they recognize it, that's not a guarantee. If they're not living it now, I don't know. It could be something very concrete. Promise when I get married, I'll lose weight. Promise when I get married, I'll quit smoking. I know that I'll definitely learn more when I'm married. Maybe. But are you okay now? Because that's a really hard way to live and a horrible setup for a relationship.
What about like intensity? Someone is a young adult, they're very intense. As people age, they get less intense. So,
Do they? Or they get more intense?
Well, they might, but you're talking about like 80. You know what I'm saying? Like, when do they mellow from age? It's not so soon.
Right. I guess if someone is an intense person, and then if someone who is dating such a person might, think that's a problem, but could also recognize that intensity could come out in learning, could come out in a job. They could be very successful if they channel that intensity. And then as time, they tend to manage that intensity in the relationship.
Well, it's more a matter of, can I say to that person, hey, but not on me. Don't intense me. And they're like, oh, sure. Like, you are intense. You could be intense. But are you going to be intense on me or expect me to be intense about the things that you're intense about? And to be on top of me that I should also be intense about whatever, that's very different than you're an intense person. Yeah, there's a lot of possible positive things about somebody who's intense, what they can accomplish, what they can get managed, what they can hurdle. But that's different than if it's going to become relational. Like you're going to be intense at me or want me to be intense or. It's not, it's why are they bothered would be my question. Like you're dating someone intense. What's bothering you about it? Well, they're so intense. Maybe they're gonna. It's the same thing as expecting a promise for quitting smoking or losing weight or whatever. Maybe they're going to turn intense on me. Maybe are they intense on you or aren't they intense on you? Yeah, but we're not married yet. Okay, but they could be intense on you now. What happens when you're not on time, or what happens when you're not sure about something, or what happens when you relate that you didn't get X, Y, or Z done? Are they intense on you or are they not intense on you? So why are you worried about that if they're not? If they're intense for themselves, don't just worry about them turning it on you. There are opportunities they could have been intense on you in the dating process. Okay, they weren't. So what do you care?
I think it's going back to all the way what you said in the beginning, which is the person has to be emotionally compatible with that. So if a person knows themselves, right, and knows they're not emotionally compatible with that based on, I don't know, their friendships or family or whatever, then maybe they should just stay away. Like if they're not compatible.
But again, it depends on whether the person is doing it with them or they're intense for themselves. Because there's no issue of compatibility with someone intense if they don't see their intensity of something that gets visited on their spouse. They just are intense. They're two different people here. There's the one that is going to be intense and intense on everyone around them. And then there's the one that's not. And then I might be compatible with one of them and not with the other one of them. So, but yeah, you want to look at all of that and make sure. And there could be somebody who's just plain not comfortable around somebody who's intense. It doesn't matter if you're not doing it to me.
Right.
I can't watch it. I can't see it. It makes me, cringe. It makes me nervous. It makes my anxiety go through the roof. And then I feel like I need to do more and I'm not doing it. And I get hard on myself and I feel so unhealthy for me. Not compatible. Exactly. Exactly what you're saying. Just know yourself and don't.
Okay, there's so much more that we could ask about this topic, but we do have to wrap up. So my final question is going to be, is there anything that we didn't discuss yet? Any kind of dating advice that you want to leave us with?
I think that one of the biggest shames that there are in the dating process is that when something happens on a date that the person, one or the other of the couple, is kind of embarrassed that it happened or ashamed or worries, that there's something they did wrong or that they're concerned is not okay. And because of their own distress and discomfort, they don't talk about it with anybody and they don't process it through and see whether about the particular thing that happened, if they compromised a standard of theirs because the other person really wanted to, I don't know, go to this restaurant that their family actually doesn't eat that hechsher, but they went because they didn't know how to say no. And now they don't know how to talk about this whole thing with anyone. And so they just don't talk about the whole picture and they're going to miss something because of that. Or they're going to dump the whole thing because of that rather than process through. There's a lot of these kinds of examples where something happened that the person, one or the other of the people, isn't comfortable with, isn't comfortable in their part in what happened. And so they're not going to talk and they're not going to process through and they're not going to have a clear picture of the relationship. And sometimes it makes them go forward with it because they don't talk it through and they shouldn't. And sometimes it makes them premature dump something because they don't They can't talk it through. And that's the biggest shame. Find somebody
Right,
to
so
talk about
who would
it
that person
with.
be?
Somebody in your life who's non-judgmental, who's open-minded, who isn't going to step in with a decision before a discussion, and understand that, yeah, you might be embarrassed. Make it be somebody that is, not going to look at you different the rest of your life, even if that's how you think of it. That's how you think of it. There are people, probably somewhere, someone in your life who really won't look at you different the rest of your life. Just take a deep breath and discuss it, because it's a shame when people don't, and they just sort of then push everything under the rug and just go forward because I'm too overwhelmed and distressed and maybe guilty to do anything else. Don't do that.
Okay.
It's great advice.
Thank you so much.
Thank
I
you.
really
This
enjoyed.
was fun again.
What did I tell you? Wasn't that a great episode? And again, like we always say, we'd like to thank our friends at Relief for helping us get the best guests possible. And Relief is a free organization. You can send them an email. You can give them a call if you need to find a psychologist or a therapist or someone in the mental health space. They're a free service, and I have only really beautiful things to say about them, and we've gotten some feedback. A few people heard our episodes and they reached out and they got some help that they needed, and everyone says the same thing, like, wow, Relief, like they're incredible, they're amazing, and they really are, and I couldn't be happier with doing this with anyone else. So if you need help from Relief, you could give them a call at 718-431-9501, or you can send them an email, info@reliefhelp.org, or you can go on their website, reliefhelp.org. And if you enjoyed this episode, please go ahead and share this with your friends, your family, your enemies, I don't know, everyone and anyone that you think could get value from listening to this episode. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please rate the Kleshik's 5 stars. When you do that, Yoni and I, every time we get 5 stars, we go out and we buy ice cream for orphans. That's not true, that's made up, but maybe that's a thing we should do. I don't know, maybe that's a break-off series from this. So who knows? Please rate us 5 stars, subscribe on YouTube if you're watching it there, and until next time, stay safe.
Living L'chaim.